Hello everyone. I'm so glad to see you back on my channel. Today, I will continue sharing the story of the single mother, Dieu Hân. Hân's memories did not come rushing back like a flood, but rather returned slowly, piece by piece, like morning mist dissolving under the first rays of sunlight. Each morning when she awoke in the little house, she would hear Tom's cheerful giggles echoing across the room. Tawn had already risen early, preparing a pot of steaming rice and a simple meal. That aroma, together with the warmth of the small kitchen, made Hân's heart tremble, reminding her of the peaceful days she once thought were lost forever. She began to practice the routines of daily life again, tidying the house, watering the potted plants on the porch, folding her son's tiny clothes. These simple habits now became the threads that guided her back to her memories. Each time her hand brushed against Tom's soft cotton shirt, or the familiar fragrance of vegetable soup wafted through the evening meal, images of a gentler past would resurface, reminding her that life had once been filled with quiet beauty. Throughout this journey, Tawn was her steady anchor. He never pressured Hân to remember, nor blamed her when she faltered in confusion. He simply stayed beside her, gently reminding her of forgotten details, smiling whenever she looked lost. When the headaches came, leaving her dizzy and frail, he would sit silently by her side, place a warm cup of water in her hand, or softly massage her shoulders to remind her she wasn't alone. His patience was like a soothing stream, slowly washing away the lingering wounds in her mind. As her memories grew clearer, Hân began to realize that happiness was right before her. Every innocent laugh, every bright gaze from Tom, every warm hug as he threw himself into her arms became a source of strength, pulling her out of the shadows of the past. The painful memories of her abusive husband could no longer bury her spirit. Instead, she found herself stepping into a new home, where gentleness and love mended and warmed her heart each day. Hân smiled more often now. Her laughter came easier, and her eyes no longer held the same shadows. Her heart slowly opened, welcoming a new chapter of life. The old wounds receded into the background, making space for tender memories being written each day, alongside Tawn and Tom, two pieces that completed the happiness she once thought lost forever. Her life seemed to have found balance again. Mornings began with Tom's cheerful voice, afternoons in the garden, evenings with the three of them gathered around the dinner table. Smiles had returned to her face, and the painful memories, once deeply buried, now lingered only as faint shadows. Hân believed that with Tawn and Tom, she had entered a new path filled with hope. But fate often tests us when we least expect it. Today, like every other day, Hân left Tom to play inside the house. The boy was usually well-behaved, content to hold his toys and babble to himself, occasionally breaking into giggles. Meanwhile, Hân busied herself in the garden, her hands deftly pulling weeds, watering plants, tending the rows of tender vegetables. The morning sunlight bathed the small garden, and the earthy scent of damp soil filled the air, bringing her a sense of calm. Yet amidst these familiar sounds, a sudden unease crept into her heart. A vague premonition rang in her mind like an invisible bell. She stopped, glancing toward the window. The silence inside was unusual, starkly different from the cheerful chatter that usually echoed each morning. Her heart pounded faster, fingers tightening around the dirt-streaked handle of the hoe. Something's wrong. The thought jolted her, filling her with dread. She rushed toward the house, her steps quickening under a flood of anxiety. The scene that met her eyes froze her in place. Tom was sprawled on the floor, his small face twisted in pain. His head had struck a nearby stone, and bright red blood gushed from the wound, seeping into his soft hair, trickling down his collar, staining it with a chilling dampness. His tiny hands clutched his head, trembling, his mouth crying out in anguish, "Mom! Mommy!" The desperate call pierced Hân's heart like a blade. Her knees buckled, her throat tightened, her veins seemed to freeze. She stumbled forward, scooping him into her arms, but her own hands trembled so violently she could hardly hold him steady. Tears streamed down her face, salty on her lips. "Tom, oh God, Tom! What happened? Don't scare me, please don't!" she cried, her voice broken with sobs, shaking as though the strength had drained from her body. Her mind spun in chaos. She had to stop the bleeding, call the neighbors, get him to the hospital. But the thoughts circled aimlessly, leaving her paralyzed in confusion. Desperately, she pressed her hand against the wound, trying to slow the blood. Tom's cries echoed through the small house, mingling with Han's choked sobs, a haunting sound that seemed to suffocate the air itself. In that moment, the heart of a mother carried only one thought. She had to save her child, no matter what the cost. Han panicked, her trembling hands still pressing tightly against the bleeding wound. Bright red blood soaked through her blouse, seeping cold into her skin, leaving her even more horrified. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Don't cry. I have to save him. I must do something," she whispered shakily, as if trying to reassure herself. She quickly laid Tom on his side, holding him still so he wouldn't thrash, then dashed inside to snatch a clean towel. Rushing back, she pressed the cloth firmly against her son's wound, sobbing as she worked. Tom screamed, his cries growing weaker, his small hands reaching out, searching for his mother. "I'm here. Mommy's here, don't be afraid," Han murmured, her voice quivering as she pressed the towel tighter. Her mind spun with panic, torn between calling for help and not daring to leave Tom for even a second. Sweat drenched her body, her heartbeat thundered so violently it felt like it would burst from her chest. At that moment, the fear of losing her child gripped her heart like a vice. Han screamed, her desperate voice echoing through the empty house. "Somebody please. Help me. Please save my child." But only silence answered. Just the wind rattling through the door and Tom's fading cries. Trembling, biting her lip until it bled, Han scooped him into her arms and bolted outside, stumbling over the gravel path. All she could think was to get Tom to someone somewhere who could save him no matter what it cost. She held her son tightly, feeling his frail little body trembling in her arms, nearly choking on the terror that consumed her. Blood seeped through the makeshift bandage, warm and sticky against her hands and arms. Tom whimpered weakly, his sobs fractured and faint, tearing her heart apart. Without a thought, she raced beyond the gate. Her bare feet struck sharp stones, leaving them bloodied, but she felt no pain. Only the raw fear of losing her child. Along the deserted village road, her frantic footsteps mingled with her cries. "Help! Please, someone save my child!" Han ran in blind panic, breath ragged, cold sweat pouring down her temples. The weight of Tom in her arms grew heavier with each stride, but she clenched her teeth, refusing to let go. Her heart echoed with a single thought. She had to find help. She had to get him to safety. She had to keep him alive. The midday sun blazed down on the dirt road, the world blurring through her tear-filled eyes. In the distance, she spotted the faint figure of a motorbike approaching. With the last of her strength, she screamed hoarsely, her voice almost breaking. "Please stop. My son is hurt. Help us." The rider slammed on the brakes, eyes wide with shock at the sight of Han, disheveled and frantic, clutching blood-soaked Tom in her arms. It was a neighbor, who jumped down in alarm. "Good heavens, what happened? Quick, put him on the bike. I'll take you to the hospital." Han nearly collapsed from exhaustion, but hope flickered in her heart. She placed Tom on the bike with trembling hands, tears streaming down her cheeks as she kept the towel pressed to his wound. The engine roared, the motorbike surging forward, leaving behind only the sound of her broken sobs blending with the machine's desperate rumble. The bike hurtled down the dusty village road, bouncing violently over potholes. Han sat behind, clutching Tom tightly, her hands still pressing against the blood-soaked cloth. The roar of the engine drowned out everything, but in her heart each frantic beat thundered louder, heavy with fear and despair. Tom whimpered faintly, his eyes half closed, his breath shallow and labored. Han clutched him closer to her chest, whispering over and over like a prayer. "Please, my child, hold on. Mommy's here, don't leave me, please." The wind whipped her hair into a tangled mess, the salt of her tears mixing with the grit of the road. Memory surged through her mind in a rush. Her years trapped in the darkness of an abusive marriage, the fear that once made her believe she had lost everything. Now that fear had returned with a vengeance, sharper and more brutal. The terror of losing the only being that gave her life meaning. The world blurred past, houses, trees, familiar scenes fading behind a curtain of tears. She could only clutch Tom tighter, as if holding him firmly enough might tether his soul to her. The neighbor, glancing back anxiously as he drove, called out, "Hold on, we're almost there. Don't worry." But how could she not worry? One single question tore at her heart, relentless and cruel. Would she be able to keep her son alive? Each passing second felt like the ground itself was crumbling beneath her feet. The motorbike swerved sharply into the hospital gate, the guard's whistle blaring, but the neighbor only shouted, "Emergency! A child with a head injury." Hearing this, several medical staff rushed out immediately. Han nearly collapsed as she climbed down, trembling hands handing Tom over to the doctors. Blood still trickled from his head, his eyes shut tight, his breathing faint, as if hanging by the thinnest thread. "Please, save my child, please save him." Han cried out, her voice broken, sobbing with numb desperation. The nurses quickly placed Tom on a stretcher and pushed him toward the emergency room. A doctor barked orders while moving. "Quick! Insert M4 line, prepare for hemostasis, check for cranial trauma." The doors of the emergency room swung shut, leaving Han frozen outside, her whole body trembling. Her hands were still smeared with blood, her clothes soaked, but she didn't notice. Her eyes clung to the closed white doors, as if she could pierce through them to see her son. The neighbor laid a hand on her shoulder, his voice steadying. "Stay calm, the doctors are here, they'll save him. Be strong, Han." But how could a mother's heart ever be calm? Han slumped onto a bench, burying her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Memories of every loss in her life rushed back, but never had she known such consuming fear. If she lost Tom, what meaning would life have left? In the cold hospital corridor, hurried footsteps echoed, and the sharp scent of disinfectant filled the air. Han sat there, each second stretching into an eternity, her heart suspended between life and death, clinging only to desperate prayers. From down the hall came pounding footsteps, Tawn breathless after rushing all the way to the hospital. As he entered, he saw Han slumped on the bench, her clothes stained, her hands crusted with dried blood, her face hollow and her eyes swollen red from too many tears. The closed doors of the operating room loomed before her, its red light flashing, signaling surgery underway. Time in the hallway seemed frozen. The harsh glow of the neon lights made Han's pale face even more drawn. She sat close beside Tawn, their hands locked together so tightly that the veins stood out. The ticking clock on the wall counted each second with merciless slowness, testing both patience and breaking hearts. Han had no more tears left, yet her swollen eyes still fixed on the emergency doors. Fear and hope wrestled within her, making her breath rise and fall in ragged waves. She whispered unconsciously, as if praying, "Tom, you must hold on. Mommy's waiting. I can't lose you." Beside her, Tana's gaze was steady yet filled with worry. From time to time, he tightened his grip on her hand, trying to pass her strength. Inside, the sound of machines throbbed rhythmically, creating a suffocating tension. The endless waiting dragged Han back to memories of darker days. Those nights lost in a fog of forgotten memories, the headaches she thought would never end, and the gentle way Tawn stayed by her side through it all. Without him, she would have collapsed long ago. And now more than ever, she needed him. Tawn looked at her frail shoulders trembling with exhaustion. He reached out to brush back her messy hair, his voice low but firm. "Trust me, Tom will be fine. Our son is strong." His words were like a rope pulling her back from the abyss. Han rested her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes, letting memories and emotions wash over her. In that flickering darkness, one truth remained clear. She could not give up. Not with Tom, not with Tawn, not with the fragile hope that their little family might one day find peace again. "Han!" Tawn whispered hoarsely. Hearing his voice, she lifted her head. In that moment, she broke down, sobbing, throwing herself into his arms like a child seeking shelter. Her whole body trembled, her voice choked with fear. "Tawn! Tom!" He fell. There was so much blood. "I'm so scared. I'm terrified of losing him." Tawn held her tightly, his own hand shaking but steadying her back with gentle pats, trying to lend her strength. His eyes locked on the emergency room doors, his lips pressed tight, his face taut with strain. He soothed her with words even as his own heart quaked. "Breathe, the doctors are here, Tom will be all right. I'm here with you, we'll wait for him together." Han buried her face against his chest, her tears soaking his shirt, her lips trembling as she repeated the same hopeless prayer over and over. Tawn held her as if anchoring them both, their hearts racing in sync with fear. The sterile hallway echoed only with the faint hiss of machines from behind the emergency doors, mingled with Han's muffled sobs. In that moment they clung to one fragile hope, that the doors would open soon, and Tom would return to them alive. Time in the hospital corridor seemed to stop. The pale neon light made Han's face even more ashen. She sat pressed close to Tawn, their hands clasped so tightly that the veins stood out. The ticking clock on the wall echoed slowly, as though testing their patience in their breaking hearts. Han had almost no tears left, yet her swollen eyes stayed fixed on the emergency doors. Inside her, fear and hope tore at each other, making her breath falter. She whispered unconsciously, as if in prayer, "Tom, you have to hold on. Mommy's waiting for you. I can't lose you." Beside her, Tana's gaze was steady yet heavy with worry. Every so often, he tightened his grip on her hand, trying to pass her strength. From inside, the sound of medical equipment pulsed steadily, filling the air with suffocating tension. The endless wait dragged Han back to memories of the past, the times lost in foggy recollections, the unbearable headaches, and the gentle way Tawn stayed by her side with endless patience. Without him, she would have collapsed long ago. And now more than ever she needed him. Tawn looked at her frail shoulders trembling with exhaustion. He reached out, smoothing back her messy hair, his voice low but firm. "Trust me. Tom will be all right. Our son is strong." Those words were like a lifeline pulling Han back from despair. She leaned her head on his shoulder, closed her eyes, and let memories and emotions flood her heart. Behind the veil of darkness, one thing became clear. She would never give up. Not for Tom, not for Tawn, and not for the fragile hope that their little family could one day be whole again. Suddenly, the emergency doors swung open, startling Han so much her whole body shook. Tawn immediately squeezed her hand as they both stared at the doctor stepping out. Hope flared in Han's eyes, though her lips pressed tight, unable to speak. The doctor removed his mask, sweat glistening on his forehead. He looked at them, his voice steady. "The boy is out of critical danger. We've stopped the bleeding and are monitoring the head injury. Fortunately, he was brought in just in time, so his condition is stable for now. But he must stay under observation to prevent complications." At those words, Han broke down, sobbing as her legs buckled, the weight of fear collapsing at once. Tawn caught her, his own eyes brimming red, though he forced his voice to remain steady. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much." The doctor nodded, adding instructions. "Be prepared. He needs special care over the next few days. The most important thing is rest, avoiding shocks, and watching closely for any abnormal signs." When the doors closed again, Han clung to Tawn, crying through her words. "Our son is alive. Tom is still with me, Tawn." Tawn wrapped her in his arms, his eyes fixed on the closed door behind which their son lay. Relief mixed with a newfound determination. From this day on, he would never allow Han or Tom to face danger again. Moments later, a nurse signaled that they could visit. Han almost rushed forward, her footsteps urgent, her heart pounding wildly. Tawn stayed close, holding her hand firmly, steadying her, grounding her. Inside the stark white hospital room, the sharp scent of antiseptic lingered. Tom lay still on the bed, his head wrapped in bandages, his small face pale, though his breathing was steady now. The sight made Han collapse at his side, sobbing. She reached out, touching his tiny hand resting weakly atop the blanket. "Tom, Mommy's here. I'm right here. Don't scare me like that ever again," she whispered, her voice breaking. His little eyelids fluttered before slowly opening. Though hazy, his eyes still recognized her familiar face. His lips parted, letting out a faint, weak call. "Mom!" The sound shattered Han's heart wide open. She bent down, kissing his small hand, tears streaming over his fragile skin. Behind her, Tana's eyes glistened as he placed a steady hand on her shoulder, giving her strength. In that moment, Han knew this was all she needed in life, to hear her child still breathing, still calling her mom, still holding her hand. All the pain, fear, and dark memories shrank into insignificance compared to this infinite love for Tom. She sat silently at his bedside, gripping his hand tightly, afraid that if she let go, he might slip away. The image of blood in his hair, his desperate cries, the helplessness of not knowing what to do, all of it still haunted her vividly, as though it had just happened. She shuddered, fresh tears welling up. Just a little more and she would have lost him, lost the most precious part of her life. The thought made her tremble, her heart tearing apart with pain. She turned to Tawn, seeing his worried but unwavering eyes, his warm hand steady on her shoulder. His presence was the anchor that kept her standing through the nightmare. Han bent down, whispering into her son's ear, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'm sorry, Tom. I was careless. I promise I'll never let this happen again. I'll always be here to protect you, with everything I have." The promise was not only for her son, but also a vow etched deeply into her own heart. Her life had seen too much suffering, but from this moment on only one determination remained: to keep her little home safe, to give Tom the love and peace he deserved. Under the pale light of the hospital room, the three of them sat together. Fear and scars lingered, but in that moment, Han felt with absolute clarity that this fragile, small family was the strength that would carry her forward. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the hospital room gradually grew lighter. At first, Tom was still weak, often tired and sleeping for long stretches. But with each passing day, his eyes grew brighter, and his soft babbling laughter returned, faint yet enough to bring Han to tears of joy. Han barely left his side. She carefully fed him each spoonful of porridge, watched over every nap, gently adjusted his blanket, her eyes never straying from his breathing. The fear of that day still lingered deep inside her, making her treasure every small moment with Tom all the more. Each time he softly called, "Mommy," her heart quivered, aching yet overflowing with love. Tawn stayed by their side as well, quietly sharing every burden with Han. He rose early to buy nutritious porridge, ran errands for medicine and paperwork, then returned to sit by the hospital bed, holding his son's tiny hand. On nights when Han grew too exhausted and slumped into a chair, it was Tawn who gently draped his jacket over her shoulders, letting her rest for a while. During those difficult days, Han realized something. Tawn was not only her pillar of strength, but also truly a devoted father to Tom. The image of him tenderly carrying the boy, patiently wiping his face with a warm towel, or whispering short stories to lull him to sleep carved itself deeply into her heart. The day Tom managed to sit up, smile faintly and say, "I'm okay now, Mommy, Daddy," Han could no longer hold back her tears. She embraced him tightly, then looked at Tawn. Their eyes met, no words spoken, yet both understood. After this ordeal, their bond had grown stronger than ever. Han thought to herself that the painful memories which once haunted her no longer had any power, because in this present moment, she had Tom and Tawn, the two missing pieces that now completed her, warming and lighting up a life once scarred by storms.
Xin chào mọi người, lại là mình đây, rất vui được gặp lại mọi người trong video của mình nha. Hy vọng rằng những video của mình sẽ mang đến niềm vui cho mọi người. Những câu chuyện mà mình kể cho mọi người nghe sẽ giúp cho cuộc sống mọi người cảm thấy vui vẻ và có một ngày mới tràn đầy năng lượng hơn. Thì hiện tại, kênh của mình đang kể về những câu chuyện của những người mẹ đơn thân, những người mẹ có cuộc sống bất hạnh và phải nam lũ cực khổ, cố gắng để nuôi con mình khôn lớn. Hiện tại thì kênh của mình đang kể về câu chuyện mẹ đơn thân Diệu Hân và lytulinda. Thì mời mọi người cùng đón xem những video của mình. Hy vọng những video của mình ngày càng được mọi người ủng hộ nhiều hơn để kênh mình phát triển hơn và mang đến nhiều video hay hơn cho mọi người. Cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video của mình nha. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video lần sau.